Special Committee on Childcare Centers. I'm Councilmember Tom Cash from District 18, and we'll take a minute, and in just a minute, in a minute or two, we'll let folks, we'll take a time to introduce ourselves and our backgrounds and why we wanted to be on this committee. So last year, just as a little bit of an introduction to the process, last year, Vice Mayor Shulman started a process of creating special committees, temporary committees, but on issues of importance, and they were special also in the sense that they included both council members and Nashville citizens to brainstorm and look to problem solve around a very specific area. And so we had 5 committees last year, and he has set up another 5 or 6, I think, this year. And one of them is this committee on looking to expand child care centers in the Nashville area. And I know that Judy Lewis had is I think the author of the question that was sent, I guess, directly to Vice Mayor Shulman, and she and I talked and kind of put together a list, like a bullet list to start with of our goals, but we're certainly not limited to those. And I can let me see if I can put those up for just a minute, maybe. Let's see, and then go back to them in a second. Here, my screen, and then there. These are just something to start with that we brainstormed. Growing the number of child care centers is, I think, the broadest of the goals, and then leveraging private sector, nonprofit, and church resources to find facilities for new centers, considering and encouraging community benefits agreements to include child care facilities. I know that's something that's coming out of the negotiations out of the soccer deal and the included in the mixed use building. And I know there are other projects that are going to include those as well. Work with the Metro Development and Housing Authority to enhance opportunities for their residents. Discuss transportation as an element of accessibility to centers. So that's just a start. And what the committees did last year is basically they had a number of meetings. They kind of came to a conclusion about what their goals, what they wanted to get out of the committee. At the end of the several month process, the committee members appointed people to write reports or a report. I was on a employee pay special committee that included teachers and other education folks like bus drivers and fire and police. And so we had each folks that were kind of representing each type of employee to write a section of the report. But and then that report was submitted to Vice Mayor Shulman and the council, and they're on the council website. And in many cases, the reports recommended, steps going forward, which might include specific council legislation or legislative topics that the council members can then put together. So why don't we go around and let folks take a minute to introduce yourself, tell who you are and what your professional association is, what you would like to get out of why you wanted to be on here, and what you hope we get out of this. I'll start that. Like I said, I'm Tom Cash, councilman in the 18th district. I'm in my first term, and I am replacing the very capable Berkeley Allen, who is now a council member at large, and we're fortunate enough to have her wisdom and participation on this committee. Before I was on council, I was an educator myself. I taught for 25 years. I was on the other end of the spectrum in terms of, I taught high school students. I was at Hillsborough for about 8 years where I went to high school, and then I was a English and government teacher at Hume-Fogg, and also for about 5 years an instructional coach and test coordinator, and then went back to the classroom for a couple of years before running for council and giving up my Metro teaching job. I'll also add that my wife is a preschool teacher at Belmont Weekday School. She was in the like 90s, early 2000s, she was a teacher at Cooperative Childcare, kind of a parent board run childcare center preschool in Green Hills. And now she's at Belmont Weekday School and been there about 5 years, I think, and loves it. So I don't know what order, but Ms. Weathersby, do you want to start by sharing with us?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bellevue Weathersby, and it is my pleasure to serve as the Director of Early Education and Youth at the Metro Action Commission. So we are in the thick of this subject matter day in and day out. And I come to this role, I've been in this role actually in an interim capacity for the past 6 months. So I come to this role from about a 20-year experience in early education, working with Head Start, early Head Start, pre-K, private pay, and a couple of states. My last role here was as the Head Start State Collaboration Director, where I work with all of the Head Start funded programs that are served across the state. So I get to drill in a very personal way and looking at what we're doing in Metro Nashville and making sure that the children that we are privileged to serve have the comprehensive experience that is the model that is Head Start. So I appreciate being a part of this forum to support doing what we do here each and every day. So thank you for this opportunity.
Councilmember Allen? I'm kind of going down my screen here.
Okay, so as Tom said, I'm former District 18 council member, so I'm pleased to have handed that off to a very, very capable successor and now serving at large. I'm the mother of 3 children, and we were fortunate enough to have good preschool options. And there's just so much data out there on the importance of what happens to kids when they are young that determines success further on in life. I am an adamant supporter of early childhood education, and also had one daughter who struggled with reading, which granted is not exactly what early childhood education deals with, but certainly we got her through that by reading to her incessantly. And that's such an important thing for young minds to be read to on an ongoing basis. So just, providing opportunities. The parents aren't going to be doing that, to ensure that there's a daytime opportunity that does that, I think is really, really important. Thrilled to be part of this group.
We're glad you're here. Thank you. Mrs. Plummer, long time no see.
Hi, thank you. It's good to be here. I am Christy Plummer. I currently work at University School of Nashville. I have been in early education for, 20 or so years. I'd have to go back and count, but started with infant toddler at Abentra and was in Metro schools with their preschool program and also kindergarten, and then largely kindergarten at University School, and now work in curriculum K-4. My passion in early childcare is a long-standing, and just to keep things brief, because I know we are many, and I want to hear more about you. But in the past few years, I've been thinking a lot more about the commitment that the schools of Reggio Emilia have made to their city. And I think I mentioned to Judy recently that, the phrase when we were trying to get a library was, every great city deserves a great library. And I feel like, every great city deserves to have childcare that's worthy of their children. So it's important. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Brown?
Hi, yes, I'm Emily Penninga Brown. So I'm coming at this from a little different perspective, it seems, than many of you, in that I have no formal education experience. I do have several years experience as a private nanny, and hoping to start my own family in the next few years. And so I'm looking at this from a perspective of what can what can we bring to the current childcare options, that I would want to see for my own children in the future.
That sounds good, valuable. Ms. Ward?
Sorry about that, trying to learn how to unmute myself. I'm Erica Ward. I'm an early childhood educator. I am currently the program director for a new program. It's called Early Embrace. It's an early childhood education program at Rabat Institute, rooted in community healing and restorative practices. And my focus here today, and really in my work, is to think about equity in early childhood education, especially racial equity in early learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis?
And Erica was way too brief. She's amazing. I'm Judy Lewis, and I'm a biomedical engineering faculty member at Vanderbilt, and also the co-founder of Edgehill Early Learning, which is a free, very small, but we hope one day much larger preschool program for families in the Edgehill housing area. And I have had a long-standing passion for helping people understand the brain development that happens in those early years that people don't know about. So there's so many after-school tutoring programs for older kids, but I want people to know it's the time to make a difference is 0 to 4, really 0 to 3, 4, 5. And so that's how this program started at Edgehill with a fund that our family has in memory of my mom and my neighbor, Jim Schulman. I was telling him, like every church that's not being used during the week needs to have something like this. Like, this is so important. It's kind of low-hanging fruit that can just change the trajectory for lives. So I feel like every child deserves equal access to quality early childhood experiences. So I'll stop myself there, but thank you so much. So that's how this all happened, but thank you all so much for being a part of it.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity by proposing it to the Vice Mayor. Let's see, where are we? Ms. Wiltshire.
Good. Well, hello. This is so much fun for me because I know several of you just from church, and I have 2 sons that are at Hillsborough now who used to be at Aiken. I remember, Christy, when you left Aiken to go to USN, we were all just like meeting together and crying, like, what are we going to do without Miss Plummer? So it's good to see you, and it's nice to see you thriving. And I actually, for a stint of time, worked at the Department of Education with Bellevue Weathersby. So it's good to see you, Bellevue. I'm so glad you have that job at Metro Action Commission. I could not be more thrilled. You're the perfect person for it. So anyway, this is really fun. I work with Erica now, so this is such a good group. And I'm honored to be asked to be a part of it. I've been working in early education for 20 years in various roles. I've taught, and here in Nashville, one of the things I did when I worked for Metro Nashville Public Schools is I started 3 early learning programs that are still running and thriving, thankfully. One is Ross Early Learning in East Nashville. Another is now Avetta Davis in North Nashville. It used to be Bordeaux, and one's Casa Asafran. So we got to design those, and that work, I'm so proud of that, and other things too. But because the goal was whatever we would want for our children, is what all children in the city deserve, particularly those facing, seemingly insurmountable barriers from birth. And so that has really been the theme throughout all of the work that I've taken on. I most recently was a policy director at Tennesseans for Quality Early Education, so worked a lot with the state legislature and got to become more knowledgeable in policies in addition to practices and how we can better aim those to make sure that all children have those early learning experiences so they can thrive 0 to 5. And you're right, Judy, that's the most important time of brain development in the whole human life cycle. So we must focus on that. And then I've become particularly passionate about childcare in the last few years and have been studying a lot of what other states and cities are doing. And now, post-COVID, we're still during COVID, but one day we'll get to post-COVID, making sure that people can work, women can work, making sure that there are options for families is really important because we just have a crisis on our hands. And so it's one of the reasons I'm so thrilled that you all brought this group together to brainstorm some solutions. I think there are lots that we can do, and I'm excited to be a part of it. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And I'll add that Lisa did some pre-homework and sent a couple of documents that I have forwarded to everybody, I believe. And I'm sure that there's great stuff. I know that there's great stuff in there. One of them is, I think, a list that you brainstormed to kind of give us some goals and framework. And then another is a letter that you sent to Mayor Cooper last summer, and that kind of suggests some actions that could be taken. And I'll let you speak to that more in just a little bit. I want to make sure I get everybody. Ms. Tombray, is that right?
Close, Tombray. Thank you. Sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is Zaya Tombray. I am very honored to be here. I come at it from two perspectives. I'm a teacher. I taught math. I also work at STEM Prep as the Director of Strategic Development and Talent, and I am a new mom, so I have a 10-and-a-half-year-old or 10-and-a-half-month-old, and just trying to figure it out. It is, I'm sure, if you're a mom, you're probably like, oh, new mom, that's a thing. But I come at it from trying to figure out the childcare piece of it during this pandemic and kind of onward. So just really, really excited to be here.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Bryant.
Okay. Hi, I'm Amy Bryant. I'm the director for the Office of Conservatorship Management for Metro Nashville. So that's my job by trade. I'm a lawyer, and I'm the mother of 4. And the reason that I wanted to be on this committee was that at one point I had 3 children in daycare at the same time, and I know the cost of childcare. And although we could afford childcare, I cannot imagine the amount that we were paying for childcare. Other people having to pay that and still work and being able to pay their bills and everything. And so I just think there's definitely a need for affordable quality childcare in Davidson County, and I wanted to be a part of that discussion.
Great, thank you very much. So it sounds like we've got a breadth of qualifications and experiences and perspectives, which is awesome. And so a couple of things, we kind of need to think. Some of us have started talking about goals, and I showed you a bullet list that I came up with, and we've got Lisa's document to look at. A couple of things we want to think about: the structure of the committee, how often we want to meet, and I think my opinion at this point, I think we have a pretty good number of folks, and so I wouldn't advise. And especially since we're going through our first meeting here, I wouldn't advise adding people to the committee. But if we have, as I'm sure we do, experts that we want to invite to speak to us or answer questions, I think that's incredibly appropriate. And so as we go along, either here in the meeting or by email, we can suggest people, especially if there's an area that we're looking at that we kind of want somebody else to tell us their experiences or help us think through, you know, a specific area. I think that would be really smart. We should choose some leadership for the committee, and I've been happy to get things going here, but don't want to make any assumptions about anything. And so some of the committees have done a chair and a vice chair. Some have done co-chairs. But I don't know that we're limited to that structure, but we definitely want to have somebody that can keep us organized, and I can absolutely work with Metro staff to help us get the meeting set up regardless. But any thoughts on that, or any motions or? Is anyone willing to serve as chair? I'll add. I'm happy to serve as co-chair if we have someone from representing the council and someone that has a more professional background in childcare centers. That might make a good duo to help lead us forward. Is there, and I'm willing to do the council side of that. Is there someone that's willing to serve as co-chair? Did I lose? Where did Judy? Are you interested?
Yeah, well, and I was going to say I unmuted because I feel responsible since I started. So I'm happy to help and fulfill any role, but I do know. I mean, if there's because I don't have as much expertise in if there's anyone else who would like to have an official role, that would be great. But I'm also happy to do whatever I can. So I wouldn't want to.
I'd be happy to do it as well, Judy. I'm happy to do it.
That would be amazing. And I'll be your whatever administrative, I'll be your assistant.
It's the best offer I think I've ever had.
I'll second all that.
I'm sorry?
I said I'll second that group suggestion. I think that's a power team right there.
Okay. Can you be specific, just for the record?
Sure. I mean, I would second co-chairs Tom Cash and Lisa Wiltshire with Judy Lewis in an something position that we haven't totally defined yet, but also knowing that there's a lot of expertise amongst the rest of us that will, I'm sure, be able to be tapped.
Absolutely.
For our membership.
Absolutely. All right, I hear a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and all in favor? If you want to unmute and say, or thumbs up, is fine. All right.
Aye.
All right. All right. Anybody against? All right. I believe we have some leadership for the committee going forward, which is awesome. Thank you, Lisa and Judy both. All right. So, and the way I set the meetings up using a doodle poll, is that a good way to keep going forward? If you want to send Lisa and me an email, if there's specific times of day, I kind of expected after in the afternoon to be more popular, but it ended up that the noon kind of meetings were more kind of in many cases got more votes. But if there are details that you want to let us know about your availability, you can send us an email and let us know. But if Lisa's happy with it, I'm happy doing a doodle poll for the next one going forward. All right.
Just quick suggestion. Number one, do we sort of think we probably want to meet? monthly, every 2 weeks, every 1 week? And if so, could we think about whether this time that we all landed on this month is a good time every month or every week or whatever?
Fair enough. I would say every week seems a little much to me, but every month doesn't seem like enough. Especially if we're aiming to have some conclusions by the time we get deeper into the budget process, which, you know, is always ongoing, but definitely will kick more high gear in like April. I think that's what Vice Mayor Shulman kind of reminded us, that, you know, shooting for some conclusions around April, May, especially if we have budget requests, is a wise thing. So I would suggest like every 2 weeks and see how that goes. You had a second part to your question about midday.
Yeah, my second question was, do we, as a starting point, maybe, or as one of the options, throw out that, well, this, you know, this Tuesday at noon seemed to work for people, just include that as one of the options. And if we have that as a standing, you know, the first, what is this going to be, the second or Tuesday of the month, it would be nice not to have it be the Tuesday of the council meeting, if that's
Agreed.
Agreed. Tuesday of the month, you know, might be something that we want to consider, just so we got it a standing date, we can all get it on our calendars, opposed to starting from scratch every single time.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I do suspect that for some of the teachers that the Tuesday at noon work during the holidays, but maybe not once school starts back up. So
yeah, so maybe look for a standing time other than this. That's a good point. Thanks.
Yeah, can you indicate if the noon, or once we get back into school, will not work for you?
It won't work for me. Say it doesn't have to do with school. It has to do with regular work scheduling, but it won't work for me.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's tricky for me, but I could probably figure it out.
Taking notes. Can anyone share that afternoon times or like, you know, like late afternoon, early evening times definitely don't work for you, or a specific day that doesn't in the afternoon? Like Berkeley kind of alluded, like the first and third Tuesdays are not good for me for council meetings, and sometimes Mondays as well. The Monday before the first and third Mondays as well sometimes, but sometimes I can make that work.
So maybe we should email you times that we know are terrible, and then from there you can create another doodle poll and we can look towards some kind of regular schedule. I think that's a good suggestion.
All right, sounds good. All right, I'm gonna go, so I guess from this point we should have a more in-depth discussion, and in our introductions we kind of got into this, but a more in-depth discussion of what our goals are, and I can pull up that list again and we can see if we want to add to it. And Lisa, I know that there's some good stuff that was in your brainstorming document that allows stuff to be added to this. I don't know if we want to just, let me see if I can put this back up. Yep. And this is, you know, this is just something that Judy and I had a phone conversation with her and wanted kind of a bullet list of some goals to start us moving forward. But anyway, so if we want to start kind of discussing our goals and seeing if we have sub goals that we want to add to this, I'm not looking at the hands. I think we're small enough that, and adult enough that we can just kind of chime in and unmute and chime in as we have something to say.
My first thought is just that I want somewhere in there the whole piece of affordability or free to be in there. But that's my only, you know, that it's not just we want childcare centers, we want them to be high quality and free for people who can't afford them, and affordable. But
I'm sure added to this. No, that's not just.
I think that's a great, the trifecta in childcare is accessibility, affordability, and quality. And so those three things, that some of the strategies we might be thinking of really kind of get to all of those, but then there are certainly things that we might want to do that get to each of those separately. But that seems like a really good frame that we want them to be, affordable and accessible, and of course, quality too.
Right. Can you all see as I change? I kind of added in the first bullet, I've kind of added affordable, free, and accessible kind of into that as well later in the transportation, but I think leaving that as something really specific to look at is wise, and I added quality in there. But all right, keep going.
I had a question, actually, maybe for you and Judy and possibly Bexley, like, is the primary goal here to just increase the supply? I mean, is it really getting to these three things? Like, is there a specific goal that you all had in mind, or is it really meant for this group to figure that out?
I think that was, I'll let Judy speak for herself, but I got the sense that that was a primary goal, that the growing the number was a primary goal, but no, in terms of like this committee susses out what our goals are. So I think there are additional things we can add to it.
Yes, I was going to say, I think whatever goals we can come up with that are within the realm of what we can realistically accomplish. And Erica and I had emailed, she had some good idea, and they were also in Lisa's ideas about maybe one thing that we really can assess is how many children are out there who don't have access, how many young children are not in any kind of a quality childcare situation, and just getting some of that data together, because everybody loves data. That helps us. That helps us move forward with a compelling story.
Yeah, one of the things that I shared in the document, I know people haven't had a chance to look at it, and it's long, you don't need to, it was just rough notes, but I think that as much data as we can collect, and there's a lot already available, we'll just kind of have to pull it together on both supply and demand are really important. And a lot of the work that Erica and I know others have done is looking by zip code at Davidson County, where are the actual childcare deserts, and where is supply lowest and demand greatest, and those things have probably shifted during this last year. We may not know everything, but I think we can get a pretty good start on that, which should inform whatever efforts we suggest going forward, and certainly places to start.
All right.
I don't know that it necessarily needs to be, listed up here. And I'm sure as we kind of get further into the subtopics, this will come up. But I think just to kind of keep in our minds to, a part of increasing the number of centers will also be supporting and empowering early childhood educators. I think the reality is right now, if we even open more centers, there still would be the challenge of staffing them, finding enough qualified people, and then being able to pay them a living wage. So even in existing centers, educators are not being paid enough to sustain themselves in this work. So I'm really curious about what are some of the creative ways that, you know, the city can invest in early childhood educators.
Makes sense. I mean, you look at the difference between preschool teachers in public realm and many of the private childcare centers and preschools. And I mean, the public school teachers are making twice what many of the private school teachers are. I don't know what it is at some of the other places, but that's another good data point to think about for sure. Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm trying not to keep talking too much, but on our, on the number one bullet point, I think it could be helpful to think of not just growing the number of centers, but perhaps, you know, the number of home-based family care operators that actually provide care for young children, babies, infants, toddlers in their homes. That's a subset that already exists, and there's probably, you know, there's a lot of good work that Erica has started on and been brainstorming, visioning about there. But it's childcare centers, and then home-based care, which is, you know, up to 8 children. Then there's kind of group care, 8 to 12 children, and centers tend to be 12 children and above. And I think all of those could be interesting expansion options, especially because it could be easier in some areas to grow the home-based care versus starting a brand new center, which tends to require a lot of space. And and as well as that, there's a whole new kind of field bubbling up within this of micro centers. So that could just be one classroom somewhere. And again, Erica, you know, you're leading a lot of work here, but there's been really interesting work being done where you can place a classroom just about anywhere, in a school, in a church, in a adjacent building to housing development. So you don't need a full center. So I think as long as we just sort of are open to all of those options, that could help us probably.
That makes sense. I know I was just thinking about some of the churches, you know, as we considered where there are churches that don't have childcare centers or preschools that might be able to add some. I was thinking that, you know, some of the ones near me are quite small and can, you know, house the kinds of preschools and childcare centers that I'm used to knowing. So I like learning more about micro centers. That's a new word for me. All right. What next? You know, this is a Metro Council committee, and obviously any report or recommendations that we come up with are likely to be seen by Metro Council, especially since you have 2 council people on here. But, you know, thinking about other levels of government and other institutions as resources, I think is wise. One thing I don't understand about pre-K funding and any I don't know what metro schools versus state of Tennessee, how the funding for pre-K works. Is metro funding a bigger portion of pre-K than they are other grades? Or is the state pretty much chipping in what, for the limited access to pre-K that we have, is the state pretty much chipping in the same way that they do for K through 12? that question make sense?
I know that there was a big state grant that has ended. That's what kick-started our universal pre-K for Metro schools, which is not exactly the same thing as early childhood, I guess, but that I think in this year's budget is no longer there, and that was a big hole we knew we were going to have to fill in the first place. But
gotcha.
MNPS is committed to continuing that just because it's been shown to be so effective. But it has become more of Metro spending just in the past year.
Gotcha.
But that looks like the future. You know, unless we can work with state legislators and convince them, you know, if we send Lisa and Judy as our emissaries, you know, and give them the data.
Right.
They can, that's a lot better than building prisons. You know, it's money much better spent.
Yes. Makes sense.
And the state has a specific pot of money to fund the state pre-K program that's run through the Department of Ed, but then there's the separate funding that comes through DHS at the state level for childcare, and mainly that's for the vouchers and certificates to help parents afford childcare. So one of the things that makes this so complicated is that there are several different funding streams, as I know many people on this call know and Bellevue knows about well, because Head Start's a whole separate thing. And so I think for our purposes, childcare really mostly is connected to DHS, but also to the Department of Ed. When we're talking about kind of state funding and how that might impact this. But the pre-K money is very separate and apart from the childcare money. Those don't, they are completely kind of compartmentalized separately.
Gotcha, that makes sense.
But along those same lines, can we merge childcare and early childhood education money? I mean, just because it's the same age group, can we use those interchangeably?
Right now, most of the funding streams dictate how the money will be used. And since they run through different departments from the state to our local level, they are not. What you suggest is actually really what needs to be done. And a lot of smart people across the country have figured this out, that when you actually blend funds or just strategically think about how to combine those and use those, you could have an early childhood budget, and then you allocate the money from there. But that requires some work and would take some steps, but that certainly seems like a really smart thing to try to look to do.
Makes sense.
Do our Metro preschools have a sliding scale?
That was newly implemented a few years ago. Yeah, before that there was only a few. It was it was just operated differently depending on the schools, but now there is a sliding scale.
And I'll just touch on, I mentioned it earlier, but just, you know, as we have public projects or we have private projects that are looking for, you know, like a tax break or something, that increasingly, you know, making sure that there are childcare facilities as a part of it seems to be on the increase. I know, Barkley, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the new soccer mixed use building that is helping fund soccer stuff is to include a childcare facility along with workforce housing. I don't know if this is something that's supposed to go way public yet, but I know you know, at some point in the next 5 years, we're going to be coming to some sort of solution or new solution to Nashville General Hospital. And I believe that the General Hospital staff and board are thinking about a similar kind of thing in terms of like having a mixed use with affordable housing or workforce housing, and including a child care center. Obviously, nothing's been decided on that yet, but I think that's something that's in their consideration. I know just a week ago we started, it seems like the Titans are moving towards a similar kind of arrangement where we use some of the Titans property to leverage funding that's, in terms of using it for some retail and housing possibly. And that, childcare is not something that came up in the brief discussion I had about that, but as they're negotiating, that might be something that we suggest to them, or stronger than suggest. So I know that that's another way to make sure that we're increasing preschools and childcare facilities, is that when we have community benefits agreements, that's on the radar as something that's very important to the community.
And Tom, I'll just throw in so you'll be aware. Part of what made it work for the soccer stadium was a letter sent by the council and signed by well over half the council members, saying we're not going to approve this deal unless you work out a community benefits agreement. And so if this group can articulate what it is we need, getting that included in the council letter when that, if that gets, we just need to plan on one of those being written as part of the Titans property discussion.
Makes sense. So
that's another time urgency thing for us, I think.
Another what? Oh, right.
I just think timing wise, the faster we can know what's meaningful, the more that can be incorporated, which would be helpful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anything else? I'm gonna go.
Our discussion was making me think about, we can think about this together, how much time we want to devote to if we have, for instance, a guest come and talk to us. But I know that the Nashville Chamber of Commerce has done at least one survey of employers and businesses in the area, asking specifically about childcare. And I think they're, looking for what is the need? Are there employers that might be willing to subsidize childcare or some other way to contribute to the affordability pieces of it? And so, and I know they've been working on this for a long time, and I worked with them when I'm back at my old job. So Samantha Perez is someone that just came to mind. Is we could either get information from her offline to bring back to the group, or if she had enough, perhaps she could talk to our group for a little bit about what they've learned that might help us come up with some specifics.
Okay, she's employed with the chamber?
Yes.
Got it, okay. And this is a little off topic, but kind of not, because we want to support, I think it's been a tough year for a lot of our childcare centers with, quarantining and some cases closures. But I want to ask this, and half state, half asked. So I know that the most recent bill that went through Congress does include $10 billion for child care centers, or I don't remember exactly what the language is, but like other than in a news article, I saw that, and I know that there was money before in the CARES Act. But I guess just making sure that child care centers know that there's relief money to apply for. Does anybody know much about that? Anybody? No?
I was waiting for someone to jump in, but so another person that's valuable to us, I think, is Gina Tech at the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, because they have a partnership with DHS to distribute that relief funding from the federal government, they've been doing that this last year. The funding was running out, so they may still be doing it, but they know all the ins and outs about. They've been working with childcare providers across Nashville to make sure they know what they are eligible to apply for, to get that grant money distributed in a timely manner. And so they've been doing that all year. I think she's a really valuable person for us to get information from.
Okay, I mean, that's a little different from what we're talking about here, which is more long-term, but I saw that the other day, and, especially as a spouse of someone who works for one, was curious about that and learning more about that. But it sounds, I've heard her name, I haven't met her, and I know the good work of the Community Foundation. So, and should have known that that's happening. I've been a little more focused on what the council has been allocating through various resources, which is a little different.
And are there thoughts on how we might want to encourage employers to offer childcare on site? I mean, that's kind of an ideal situation. Vanderbilt has a great model for that I know is really valuable to the people that can get access to it. Is it appropriate, and is there a role for us to try to encourage and enable that to happen more? See a thumbs up from Lisa, so that's a good sign.
I definitely think that it's appropriate, and it's, should be encouraged. And one thing I think is important to do is to ensure that it's still accessible to all children, because that's actually one challenge, even with Vanderbilt, that there are plenty of Vanderbilt employees that, because of the certificate program, they are not able to access childcare through their employer, even though it's on site. So that's a piece of it too, because there are such systemic issues when it comes to the funding of early childhood education. It's very expensive, and that is a big challenge that is being faced on a national level, as well.
Yeah, and Vanderbilt has pretty high demand, I believe, too. So I don't know that they even have enough spaces to meet their demand. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
No, well, actually, so the challenge, and not to call out, it's just they don't accept child care certificates. So DHS, the state, has a child care certificate program to help low-income families access child care. And what happens is the state reimburses child care really at only about 50 to 60% the actual cost of quality. So if you're a high quality program like Vanderbilt, right, or like there's some other, high quality programs that I could name that are amazing programs, but their tuition is much more than the state reimbursement rate. And so they don't accept that certificate because they know that certificate doesn't actually cover the cost to care for that child. So you have low income families who aren't able to access some of the higher quality programs. And because there's already a shortage for childcare anyway, the higher quality programs don't even have the incentive to open it up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So maybe adding to what I put about encouraging employers to provide accessible childcare, like this is a question: encourage employers to participate in the certificate program?
Yeah, so Erica nailed it. I mean, that's essentially their biggest dilemma in childcare, is that the gap between the cost of quality and what's reimbursed is just high. And so what happens is our community-based programs struggle and can't pay as much, or can't pay benefits, or are in the red all the time because they have to cover that, or families have to cover it and families can't. And so everybody's stretched. And one of the issues with certificates is that it's very cumbersome from an administrative point of view, as well as the cost. So if I'm a high quality provider, I'm not really incented to accept vouchers, because it's a big giant headache, and it's a cost, that I'm going to have to cover. So there's some really interesting things being done in other places. One I just read and talked to a few people about was, we could actually do something interesting, like create a network of multiple childcare providers and have that network actually contract directly with the state for a certain number of vouchers. And then that entity, that network, administrative function of the network actually takes care of distributing those vouchers and making sure that there's more equity in the programs. It takes some of the burden off of individual providers, and it also decreases the cost to them. So that's just one example. There are ways around this, but that might be an interesting thing to look at if we had some providers willing to kind of join forces around that.
Something that I'm curious about, and this might be getting into solutions rather than questions, but when we think about opening childcare centers at high schools or that sort of thing, is there a way to have high school students get credit, like almost like a home ec sort of thing? So they are learning the skills of taking care of children, and the children are getting like lots of attention, and then that's also creating sort of a pipeline for childcare centers, even if it's just like assistantships. And the other thing I'm wondering about is like what sort of regulations are prohibitive to different companies or entities so that they are not opening up childcare centers. Like what, like regulations are great, and then there are some that are over the top, right? So like, what are those?
Right.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, it's heavily. Yeah, I understand. As a spouse of a childcare teacher, I understand that there are huge regulations that are well intended, but sometimes can really. In fact, I was somewhat joking 6 months ago that childcare centers with all the hand washing are probably they're probably the safest places in our pandemic. I had a question from something you said.
Hey, Tom, do you mind if I jump in to
yeah, go ahead.
Her last question? I think that's somewhere that Metro Council and Metro can be really helpful. A while back, at the group that I was working with, we were approached by partners at Bass, Berry & Sims that said, we are desperate to provide childcare for our employees because we see it as a retention. We will pay for it. If it costs $1 million, great. If it costs $5 million, great. We'll pay for it. But they couldn't get around some of the regulations specifically around codes. Now, there's one that's really tough to get around, or that comes down to safety, and that's the childcare facility has to be on the first floor. And the Bass Berry building it's not possible to accommodate that, or at least it wasn't at the time. But that was the only thing standing in the way of them paying for that. And I'm sure they're not the only ones. And when I went back and looked at the rules and regulations from the Department of Human Services, and they're not as onerous, but when it comes down to the codes, Metro codes and fire codes, some of those can get really tricky. One example is if you provide childcare in your home, there are certain regulations, of course, you have to meet. Well, one of the barriers to some expanding home care we found in Tennessee is that people were being told they had to have a working water fountain in their homes, and that's just not feasible. And that was not a DHS regulation, so it's not required to provide childcare, but it came down to a kind of communication issues around the fire codes. And so I think we could find out a little bit more about some sticking points for providers, and that'll probably shine a light on some coding issues that may be fixable by Metro Council.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I'm chair of the codes committee, so I feel certain that this can be heard by some stuff that we come up with can be heard by the committee. I was going to add, I feel like some high schools do have, or at least used to have, some childcare centers. This is probably going 20 years back, but I know Pearl Cone had one for a while at least. I don't know if they still do. And I would not be surprised if there were others. Just on that point.
Yeah, it's been one in the past 3 years. I think that's worth checking into. I would think we could find out through the academies, because that may be how it's done.
I also saw on that list that MDHA was mentioned, and I did want to, share that my program, Early Embrace, is in an early stage of developing a partnership with MDHA to support residents to become home-based childcare providers. And so that's something that we are actively working on right now, and any kind of support and pressure and, enthusiasm from other entities, I think would be really helpful in that.
What are there MDHA opportunities and we need to enhance them, or is there nothing? I don't know. I should know this, but I don't.
Well, in terms of like on site, currently we're working to develop the home-based component of it. It's existed before, but funding the program to support residents becoming home-based providers went away, and so now we're working with them to launch something again. Martha O'Brien used to have a child care center in Casey Homes they had to close because of funding, but they still have a modified program, early learning program now. And of course, many of the children in MDHA have the privilege to be able to go to Head Start. And so really the question is, how do we kind of supplement for some of the children who aren't able to enroll in Head Start? How do we also ensure that they have access to childcare?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
One of the reasons Erica and I are talking so much about home-based care is that one thing that was really startling to me, I'll share it with this group, is when I was at TQEE, we did a report across the state. We did one for Nashville. I'll send it to our group just so you can see it. It's a little dated now because it was pre-COVID, but it examined the child care issue with some data and stats. And one of the things we learned is that the Department of Human Services licenses about 2,200 child care centers across the entire state. We have the numbers for Nashville too. But what we know, or at least what we unearthed, is that there are over 13,000 child care providers across the state, which means that the vast majority of child care providers are unlicensed. They're operating off the radar screen, and it's just what you would expect. I can't afford childcare, so I'm dropping my kids off with so-and-so in the same apartment complex, or with a woman down the street, and she's caring for 20 kids in her home. Or, so they're not the pinnacle of quality that we would want, but that's what all parents and providers can do since it's so unaffordable. So I think that presents an opportunity. There are a lot, and Erica has been doing research on this. There are a lot of home-based providers that are, under the radar screen, but with just a little bit of support and help, they could get on the radar screen. They could be licensed, or they could be higher quality, or they could provide more for more kids. And so I think that's worth us looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Is the barrier to licensure there, is that financial or? Okay.
Predominantly. It's other things too, but yes.
It's regulatory, it sounds like. I mean, if you have to put a water fountain into your house, it's going to.
Right.
Lisa, is there any data on if those actually are lower quality? I mean, or some of them, is there any reason to think that those are a bad option and that they need to be changed, or that they are a great option and they need to be brought into the light without squelching them?
That's a great question, and I certainly would invite Erica and others to chime in because they're talking to actual providers. I mean, I would certainly venture to say from the ones that I've talked to and visited in my time working on this, that they're not necessarily lower quality. And in fact, many women who start these delight in young children, and they know what to do, and their work is more developmentally appropriate sometimes than what we see in schools. But an important consideration is that they just would probably want to do a lot more. They can't, in terms of outfitting the space and getting resources and being able to do things for and with the children that they're just scraping by to do. So I think, I would venture to say a lot of the quality issues are just around not having enough support, more than genuinely being low quality.
That's exactly what I was going to say, that quality is almost directly a question of resources, and not just, money, but training, support, community resources, parents, all of these various factors directly impact quality. And I think also, just to put this in context, even on a national level, whether it's a center or a home-based provider, less than 25% of all child care providers are considered high quality in the United States. So, on a national level, everyone has an issue when it comes to quality, and that quality issue is a resource issue. So I think what we're doing here today to think about how can we creatively generate resources from the city or county level is really going to be impactful. And with it, I don't want to put you on the spot, Belva, but I would really love to hear a little bit more about Head Start, and if there's any kind of proposals or recommendations that we could do to really be able to support the amazing work that Head Start has been doing for so long.
Well, what I can tell you is that, and I've worked in Head Start in a couple of states actually over my career, and so the way Head Start operates is they have the number of slots that are available, and that is basically what we have. But we have the maximum that is available on the Head Start side. Now, we just did some maneuvering of some early Head Start slots, which served our youngest 0 to up to age 3. And of course, Head Start does 3 to school entry. And so we are maxed what is available for us at this point in time. But what I will tell you is that, Head Start, for those who may not know, Head Start offers a huge comprehensive opportunity for families. It serves whole child, whole family, meaning not only does it serve for the academic readiness and preparation and school readiness as its focus, but it also makes sure from a health perspective that those opportunities are met. And 90% of the children who are served must meet income guidelines, but 10% can be those that have other needs that need to be supported in that environment. So I say that to say that in Nashville, we are at what is available for us. And the way that the federal government awards monies is that there either has to be a loss of a grantee, and because Nashville is the grantee for the entire city, we are somewhat limited in terms of what we are able to do, at least on the Head Start side, because there's no new Head Start money or opportunities at this point in time. Where there sometimes are opportunities are on the younger end. So a lot of what we're talking about, we're limited in those opportunities. But where we have opportunity and creativity is to be able to partner with others in a number of ways. And that's something that we're looking at with the coronavirus particularly, and being able to serve more children in a way that they may be in private childcare, they may be in some other setting, that we are able to support them in a way that they might not otherwise get served. So I'm not sure if that gets to the spirit of your question, but just to say that a Head Start is an option, but isn't a limited option, as slots are made available through the federal government, which at this point are basically maxed at this point in time. So that gives us very limited options in terms of full Head Start slots to expand, but certainly opportunities to do some collaborations and partnerships with others to be able to support some of the comprehensive services that might be available to families who might benefit from having that comprehensive service, array of comprehensive services.
Thank you. That's helpful. And may I ask, I mean, I'm not holding you to any like specific number here, but can you give us a range or sense of what those spots are that are maxed out?
I can give you an exact number. How about that?
That's even better.
I came prepared to the table. But
awesome.
we have a total of 1,365 slots. 120 of those are early Head Start, are infants and toddlers, and the remaining 1,245 are at the age 3 to 4. For all of Metro Nashville, Davidson County is our catchment area. So those are the numbers that we are funded to serve.
Gotcha. And if I could also ask, so the federal funding, I'm trying to get a sense of what it covers. Like, does it? I'm assuming that it pays salaries, but does it all and like materials and stuff like that? But does it also cover like capital, like help pay for the building that houses the center?
Yes, it does. Because we are a metro entity, of course, we have the support of metro government, because most of our buildings are metro buildings. And so we get to benefit from our non-federal share as a result of that relationship. So the short answer is yes, all of that is covered either directly out of the grant expenditures or as an in-kind from metro government.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right, I have a schedule till 1:30, so I don't want us to have to end too quickly. And I guess we should have a conversation about next steps. Not that we have to stop our list of. I'm going to take us back to move back to. Not that we can't continue talking about goals and ideas, but I do want us to kind of get a sense of what our next steps are. And I know one of the things that I want us to talk about in the next steps is we keep talking about data collection. And so I want to make sure that we've got some specifics there in terms of what that might look like in terms of homework for us, and if we need to clarify what it is we're looking for. And I can, I'll get with Lisa and we'll talk about scheduling the next meeting. I think you all gave us a little bit of a sense of, a fairly good sense of some availability, but we can communicate with you more specifically going forward. But what do we see as next steps, both in terms of collection of data, and that might include if we have folks that we want to come and talk to us.
I think we're definitely going to need, and I think we can get this probably definitely by our next meeting, is in Davidson County, perhaps by neighborhood or zip code, just an understanding about what child care providers are operating, or viable operator operating. As unfortunately, I think probably there are some that have closed and maybe closed permanently. So just an understanding of supply. And then maybe we can also be thinking about how we might get, we certainly can get population and demographic numbers, so we can get that side of demand and then figure out maybe how to drill into that a little bit more together.
It does be helpful to have data, far enough ahead of time to study it and get familiar with it. And then I would, at some point in the next, in some of our early meetings, it would be so helpful to hear from folks like Erica and Belva on what are the obstacles to doing what works better. What's keeping the things that work from scaling up. And Judy, maybe you used, or Christy, I guess it was, whoever started the home-based programs or the early learning centers. Why is it not possible to simply replicate what we know is working now? And I'm afraid the answer is all going to come back to money. But I don't know, if we can quantify it or qualify it in some way that we can try to get creative then about how to make those resources available. It would be helpful to hear from the success stories and what the obstacles to scaling those up are. And I don't know if that necessarily needs to be the very next meeting, but I think that should be an early meeting.
And I think along those lines, it could be interesting to hear from like Catherine Siebold at Vanderbilt, and Dollar General is the other like sort of big corporation that comes to mind of having some kind of in-house childcare. So when we think about barriers on that, on that side of things, what those might be. I would love to hear more about I don't know when or where that falls into the into the scope of things, but it does feel in terms of regulations. I know that in thinking about serving teachers, for example, I have a niece who has two twins that are almost 2 years old, and the math doesn't work to be on a teacher's salary and pay childcare for those two little people. And so thinking about what is that, are the regulations specifically, when you think about teachers, there are plenty of schools that might have an extra space. The thing that they might bump into is not having the appropriate playground. I think we know what the list is of all the things that you would want for children. So those things, sort of thinking about who's doing the corporate work well and what's getting in their way. I know Vanderbilt has they had a parent committee that for their child care center that gave input maybe a year ago, and they were one of their actions points was thinking about how to extend the opportunity Vanderbilt piece that they offer for their for students to the child care world, which would certainly be a help.
Thanks. And I'm sorry, you mentioned Dollar General. Was that an example of an institution that's doing it right or that needs to do it better?
I visited a long while ago and it looked right then. It was just as we were getting ready to start infant toddler at Aventra, was touring around and seeing. And what stood out to me was that it was definitely part of their Dollar General campus. So if you were there to work, you could all come together.
That's interesting. Well, never mind. That's interesting.
Christy, speaking to your teacher idea, there is a charter school collaborative, which is just a group of charter schools and some charter leaders who got together a couple of years ago and said, we just can't recruit and retain the best teachers because they're often young and they want to have children and they can't afford childcare and it's just impossible. So they partnered with, at the time it was Fanny Battle, now St. Luke's, and to actually have a childcare classroom on their school site for the teachers, kids, so they could be with their parents while they were teaching and right there on site. And that is also a new and blossoming part of childcare across the country, is to have these micro centers or classrooms in schools. And, I think the charters have some leeway to just try this out and to see what happened. And COVID got in the way of them opening their first classrooms, but I think they're going to open them this next year. And they mentioned that there's somebody, a woman named Jennifer Bell at Metro Schools, who has been working on a plan there to have childcare on site in schools for teachers. And I don't know what the barriers that have gotten in the way yet or why that hasn't just flourished yet, but we could look into that because that seems like a real promising area to focus on. I'll put that on our list too. Yeah.
Would it be interesting or helpful to kind of make a list of and contact churches that are in areas of need and just see if there are some that do have rooms that, maybe 20 or 30 years ago used to have a Mother's Day out or something, would that be helpful?
Absolutely.
And I can volunteer to do something like that if that.
I think the other piece of that is, why did that stop? And is it because of regulatory barriers we threw in the way, or cost barriers, or what? And what can this group do to remove those barriers?
Well, I expect there are just cases where it's like they just don't know where they'd like to, but they don't know where to start and just need guidance. And I'm sure that there are regulatory barriers in some cases and financial in others, and real estate or the way that, property is set up. But I would suspect after the last year that some churches might be looking for ways to boost their income or the cash flow.
Yeah, that presents a promising opportunity because of the rent and the space, and it may already be outfitted and available. And so it's really just putting the people and the materials in there. And I will say, 90% of the barriers I've seen over the last 3 years with childcare is that the business model doesn't work. They cannot break even. You have to have at least 100 kids at 90% enrollment basically to break even, and most don't have that. And as one of the things we need to be careful in our recommendations about, if you just say we should scale up Metro's pre-K program, well, the problem with that is that could take 3 and 4-year-olds away from the child care centers, and that is their profit margin. And so then it's really expensive to provide care for infant and toddlers. So they're even more in the hole and they have to close. And so a lot of this has to do with the state and funding and how it's funded. There's not enough funding, but I think there are also ways we can think about. They're the promising part of creating some networks. Or one of the crazy ideas I had in thinking about this meeting was how Pencil Foundation is a kind of liaison between corporate sponsors and sponsors in the community and schools. Would be so interesting to see something like that set up for childcare programs, which are just a bunch of individual mom and pops, because oftentimes what they need is, for instance, some technology or automation software to help with their business management, their administrative management. Childcare directors spend an inordinate amount of time on administrative tasks, things that they're not trained to do on the business side, so they can't put that effort and time and resources into teachers and kids. But if there's so many technology companies and companies in Nashville that are resource rich, if they could somehow be connected to helping childcare programs or providing automation software or, whatever it is, sponsoring, that could be really interesting, because that could free up some resources that could go to helping the business model. That's sort of a fly in the sky idea, but I don't know why that couldn't help, maybe.
Another thing, I know we mentioned having speakers, and actually, I think it'd be great if we could have, Lisa, I know that you've done research in this area, but maybe give a short presentation at some point early on about what are other cities and counties doing. I know that, there are other cities that have an office of early learning for the city, or there's other counties that have an early learning collaborative. If you could at all, I know you've done research on that, that's why I'm kind of calling you out on this. If you could kind of give our committee a presentation on that, so that can, just have something to compare it to and have an idea of what's going on in other places in the country on a kind of local level.
Yes, absolutely.
And Tom, is it within the scope of this committee to recommend that Nashville have an office like that? Can we say that's what we need?
Yes. Yes. Are you asking if in terms of our report, can make recommendations to the mayor's office and the council? Yes. And also, legislation, we can create legislation to do it as well. I think probably the first is the way to go first, to, approach the administration about it, and see what their thoughts are and get them on board, meet with, mayor's education folks. And so I think that is within our purview, yes. All right, we got about 2 minutes left, and I want to thank our tech folks that are here. I think Ms. Hayes with the council staff is here, and Dawntree with the IT department has been great getting us set up and having the technology to have this meeting. So I want to thank them and don't want to keep them past what we had scheduled. So I think, Lisa, you and I can get together in one way or the other and kind of talk about, we've gotten a lot of great feedback, and there's so much I think we should probably take a little time to sort through it and figure out like steps and what research needs to be done and gathered and presented to the committee. And so we may be asking for your help if there's something that we're questioning that is in your area of expertise. We might ask you to do a little research, or and at some point in a few months, when we are putting together a report, we may decide on, I don't know, I don't see what it is right now, but have different sections to the report, and we may get different folks to write different sections of the report and kind of come together and consensus on a conclusion / set of recommendations. So anything else before we sign off? I want to thank everybody for participating. I was excited, and just talking with y'all and hearing your enthusiasm, I'm even more excited than I was an hour and a half ago. So I appreciate everybody's participation and knowledge and enthusiasm about the subject. I think we can make a difference.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Right. Take care. We'll talk soon.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.